Well, thanks very much for that. Now, elections in the US may be some time away, only in November, but the political heat is rising, especially with Trump getting a boost in polls after the shocking attempt on his life a few days ago. What could Trump 2.0 mean for markets? That's the question. And we have some idea because we've heard it from him. He gave an interview. He sat down with Bloomberg Business Week last month. The reason we're putting this out now is because his odds have picked up. I mean, betting markets are giving a 70% chance that Trump perhaps comes back and there's going to be a Trump presidency. And details out of that interview have been ignored by markets as well, but not anymore. So let's dive straight in. 7 top takeaways from that interview. Now, number one, it's a pet sort of project for Trump. He wants the dollar to be lower. He thinks other countries are sort of ripping the US off by devaluing their currencies and gaining an advantage in terms of trade with the US. It's the first thing he mentions when asked about his views on the economy. And he says, and I quote, "We have a big currency problem because the depth of the currency now in terms of strong dollar as compared to a weak yen, a weak yuan, and it is massive." I mean, the yen and the Swiss franc get explicit, the yuan get explicit mentions, and he describes the dollar as being very high. We should also get a sense that, from the interview that Trump tariffs 2.0 will not just be limited to China. That's point number 2. Semiconductors could be targeted as well. Remember, Taiwan is home to 90% of semiconductor production. He says, and I quote, "Taiwan took our chip business from us." I mean, how stupid are we? I mean, it's a rhetorical question. And he says, they took all our chip business. They're immensely wealthy. By the way, he also tones down expectations when asked if he would defend Taiwan against China. That's interesting. Number 3, and this is oil. Trump suggests more US supply could be a focus. More US oil supply could be a focus. The exact quote, he says, "We can cut energy way down. You know, I've always say we have more liquid gold under our feet," which is true. We have more liquid gold than anybody else. And we could get energy prices down at such a big cost. And interest is such a big cost as well. Number 4, China, of course, remains the favorite topic. For 30 years for Donald Trump, China has been right up there. China gets 40 mentions in that interview. He says how tariffs are good for negotiation. He kind of goes into the details about whether it's going to be 50%, 60%, but he says, well, they're good starting place for negotiations. Then he goes on to talk about the US corporate corporate taxation. He says a 1% corporate tax, perhaps a cut is more likely. And he says, and I quote, "I like the simplicity. I like 20% better. I like 15% yet better. But I think that would be, that'd be hard to do." Will there be changes at the Fed? That's the next question, right? Will he sort of let Powell continue with his term if he gets presidency in November, or will there be a new Fed chair? He says, "I've had my own disputes with him, that is Chair Powell, but no, I would let him serve it out, especially if I thought he was doing the right thing." Right now, we have to keep rates where they are. So he's in alignment with what the Fed is doing right now. Interestingly, when asked to describe Trumponomics, the first words he uses are, and I quote, "low interest rates." Gets you a sense of what he'd like. Trump is not happy with the EU-US trade relationship as well. To quote him, he says, "The EU treat us violently. They take almost nothing," which is US exports into EU. And his complaint, of course, is that the tariffs there are too high. He compares the EU bloc to China, which suggests that trade restrictions may be on the cards there as well. All in all, I mean, it's a summary of views, just 7 points. There is much more, but a Trump 2.0 could mean lower oil, lower dollar, and more hawkish or kind of adversarial trade relations, not just towards China, but Taiwan and Europe as well. Back to you.
Make informed decisions with comprehensive analysis on the go.
Strengthen your portfolio with real-time market updates on the go. Create effective strategies with insightful expert opinions on the go.
Grow on the go with CNBC-TV18, now streaming live 24/7 on YouTube.
For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC TV18 on all of our digital platforms.